Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a fascinating look at the creation of modern Morocco. Specifically, its complex and ultimately successful path to independence and full sovereignty back in 1956.
It's a really compelling story, not as straightforward as some other decolonization histories.
Exactly. And our mission today is to move past the simple dates and really understand the strategic moves. The political alliances, the major miscalculations by the colonial powers.
And the immense internal pressure. That's a huge part of it. The way the Moroccan people themselves drove this forward.
Right. So to set the stage, we have to start in 1912. Morocco was this ancient sovereign sultanate, but that year it was formally divided.
Into two distinct protectorates. You had the vast majority under France, and then a pretty significant northern strip under Spain.
So we're tracking a dual victory here.
Okay.
Independence from France on March 6, 1956, and then the reunification when the Spanish parts were integrated on April 7. Okay, let's unpack this. How did Morocco manage to dismantle this deeply embedded dual colonial system and achieve unified self-rule so relatively quickly?
Well, it really began with the nature of the system itself. What's fascinating here is that the 1912 agreements established this protectorate system, which was, designed to exert colonial control while maintaining the illusion of local rule.
Sovereignty in name only, right. They kept the traditional government structures of the Maxin, but just sort of hollowed them out.
Precisely. The Sultan remained the nominal head of state, which gave it a veneer of legitimacy, but the real levers of power, legal, foreign, military affairs were entirely controlled by the French resident general.
So it wasn't outright annexation.
No, the strategy was much more subtle. It was deep political penetration. They integrated Morocco's economy and infrastructure directly into their global empire. But the resistance, and this is critical, it didn't wait. The struggle for self-determination began almost immediately. The first massive organized effort was the Rif War in the north.
In the 1920s.
That's right.
The Rif War, led by Abd al-Krim al-Khattabi, it's often remembered as a military failure since it was eventually put down by Spain and France. But what was its lasting legacy?
That's such a critical distinction. Militarily, yes, it was defeated. But intellectually, spiritually, it was a victory. It showed the next generation of leaders two very important things.
Okay.
First, it confirmed that the popular will to resist foreign rule was incredibly strong. And second, the sheer brutality needed to suppress it showed that pure armed rebellion, especially in rural areas, wasn't sustainable against modern armies.
So it was a hard lesson.
A very hard lesson.
Yeah.
The legacy of the Rif War was that the fight needed to pivot. It had to move from the mountains to the cities, to the political and diplomatic arena.
That sets the stage perfectly for the transition we see starting in the 1930s. The movement matures, right? It goes from a localized military uprising to a structured, politically organized national effort.
That's when the organizational backbone appears. And that's most notably the Istiqlal, the Independence Party. They become the primary unified political voice, and that fundamentally changes the nature of the challenge facing the French.
And what's fascinating here is how sophisticated their strategy was. They weren't just protesting in the streets, they were operating on the world stage.
Yes. They were arguing for Morocco's right to self-determination using the very language the Allies had used during World War II.
The Atlantic Charter and all that?
Absolutely. They explicitly referenced it. In 1944, they presented the Manifesto of Independence, formally petitioning the Sultan to endorse their demands. This just transformed the movement from, internal dissent into an official, internationally relevant political challenge. And this leads us to the crucial figure who gave the movement its undeniable national legitimacy, Sultan Sidi Mohammed bin Yusuf.
Who we later know as Mohammed V.
Exactly.
His role was so subtle at first, but it was completely transformative. He didn't just passively accept the Istiqlal, he gradually aligned himself with them.
Yes, and by doing that, he effectively wove the independence movement into the cultural and religious fabric of the entire nation. The Sultan was the spiritual and political leader. He was the head of the Maxin.
So when he started to, say, subtly refuse to sign off on French policies,
it had immense symbolic power. He cemented his status as the single most popular symbol of the independence struggle. His support gave the Istiqlal critical mass.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This alliance between the political movement and the monarchy sets up the colonial power's biggest strategic failure.
It really does.
The moment the French completely misjudged the true depth of that national unity.
We're talking about 1953. The French administrators, they saw the Sultan's popularity as the biggest obstacle to their control. They thought, if we just remove this popular leader, we can install a puppet and crush the movement's momentum.
So their solution was to forcibly exile him.
To Corsica, and then later to Madagascar.
And this wasn't just a political mistake. I mean, from a cultural and religious standpoint, it was a catastrophe for the French, wasn't it? They just didn't understand that spiritual bond.
They underestimated it massively. His expulsion wasn't seen as just removing a political figure. It was an assault on the nation's soul. And the French intention, which was a power move, it just instantly backfired. The entire country erupted.
So that one strategic error transformed the struggle overnight.
Completely. The nationalist movement, which had been primarily political, suddenly became a massive popular resistance. It was now fueled by this emotional, cultural, and religious fervor.
So instead of fragmenting the resistance, which is what they wanted, the exile of Mohammed V gave it a single universal rallying point.
And his refusal to yield while in exile, that elevated him from a popular monarch to an unassailable national hero, a martyr for the cause.
This raises an important question, right? When does removing a leader inadvertently create a martyr and just accelerate the opposition's success? The French created a vacuum, and the Moroccan people filled it, with protests, with resistance, making the territory ungovernable. So, by 1955, the internal pressure is at a boiling point, but the sources also point to external pressures forcing France's hand. It seems like they just realized they couldn't afford to hold on to Morocco anymore.
That's absolutely correct. There were three critical external factors all converging at once. First, the global political landscape was shifting decisively against colonialism.
The whole non-aligned movement, pressure from the U.S.
Exactly. And second, and this was crucial for Paris, was the situation right next door. The Algerian War of Independence was just ramping up. It was demanding immense financial and military resources from France.
Ah, so they desperately needed to stabilize their western flank.
They couldn't fight on two fronts. They were essentially facing the prospect of fighting two highly motivated North African nations, and Morocco's resistance was now fully unified behind their exiled king.
So Morocco is just becoming too costly, too volatile to maintain, especially when you measure it against the massive commitment needed for Algeria.
Exactly. And this forced a return to the negotiating table in 1955.
And the first non-negotiable step for any kind of stability was bringing Mohammed V back.
The return of the Sultan in November 1955 was. It was a moment of national jubilation. It signaled the inevitable end of the Protectorate. That event effectively sealed the deal.
And things moved quickly from there.
Very quickly.
Oh.
Straight into formal negotiations for full sovereignty.
Which culminates in the formal declarations of 1956. On March 2nd, a joint declaration is signed, formally recognizing Morocco's independence, ending the French Protectorate. A huge victory.
A profound victory, won largely through diplomatic pressure fueled by that popular unity.
And then, to complete the process, there was the crucial subsequent step.
Right. You have to remember the dual system from 1912. Just over a month later, on April 7th, 1956, Spain also relinquished its control over the northern territories.
Which allowed the newly sovereign nation to finally achieve territorial reintegration.
And political reunification. It solidified the modern state of Morocco. And that speed achieving full sovereignty and unity within weeks, that's what makes it a true triumph of resilience and strategy.
But achieving independence is one thing. Building a modern nation-state from the fragmented legacy of two different colonial powers, that's a whole other challenge. Mohammed V's task was immense.
The immediate challenge was technical, and it's often overlooked. Morocco had to unify two distinct colonial legal systems. French civil law here, Spanish civil law there, two different currencies, two different administrative structures, two different educational models.
That is a staggering undertaking. I mean, they weren't starting from scratch. They were starting from two different, totally incompatible realities that have been imposed for decades.
It required years of focused, complex institutional reform, all led by the palace. But beyond politics, independence was also seen as a kind of a cultural and spiritual revival, a rediscovery of Moroccan identity after being constrained by foreign administration.
Rebuilding national confidence.
From the ground up.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the story of Morocco's journey to freedom really seems to underscore a vital truth, that the success of these movements often depends on leveraging a single, universally accepted authority, in this case the Sultan, to unify all the different political factions.
It's a testament to the power of a unified popular will, yes, but also to the tactical brilliance of the Istiqlal Party in turning international norms and colonial mistakes into real political capital.
So to sum up for our listeners, the critical elements here were The strategic shift from military resistance to sophisticated political organizing.
That's the Rif War to the Istiqlal Party.
The deep, legitimizing alliance between the nationalist movement and the Sultan, and then the French's spectacular own goal in 1953, which just galvanized national unity beyond repair.
You couldn't have put it better.
Morocco's Independence Day is celebrated today as a testament to that powerful struggle. And as you reflect on this journey, here's something to consider. Given that the French were simultaneously involved in the protracted and bloody Algerian War, how much of Morocco's rapid diplomatic success in '56 was due to that unique political cohesion between the king
And how much was simply due to France prioritizing the resource-intensive conflict right next to it?
Exactly. It requires weighing that internal political skill against the external. That's our team there. Thank you for joining us. Have to fun.